It's all a question of imagination. If we imagine today what kind of world we want, and that's the world will be created. If we do not imagine, it will not be done.
It was one man's crazy dream.
It really did start as just seeing a need and just diving into it.
Doing stuff that people either say can't be done, or why bother, or so what?
To say, okay, let's define the problem and solve it.
To go against the grain, to fight through the challenges and the naysayers.
I have to be stubborn.
It's neither pragmatism nor inspiration that drives me, it's more the passion.
But addressing it kind of one person or one village at a time was not going to be enough.
For us, that means doing all sorts of crazy stuff and just being really fearless about it.
We all have to push through our strengths to help it happen. It will be a long road.
It's a tough job, but we get so much kick out of it.
We will win this battle.
I know when the work I do is working. By seeing, I know it works.
Ladies and gentlemen, Grammy Award-winning artist, Ben-Ari.
Ben-Ari, ladies and gentlemen. If we are a good Skoll audience, we might get to hear her again. My goodness, there are more of you when you stand in the middle out here. And I have legs since the podium and I consciously uncoupled, for those of you who've been here before. Welcome to the Skoll World Forum. Welcome to my favorite happening, and welcome to Oxford. This is a remarkable gathering, and this is a remarkable place. Cities have deep desires, and every one of your cities has a desire that you will recognize. In LA, it is the desire to be beautiful. In New York, it is the desire to be rich. In London, it is the desire to be titled. In Shanghai, it is the desire to be entrepreneurial, and so on and so on. And Oxford's deepest desires are to be thoughtful, and to be well-read, and to be analytical, and to make a difference. And that's one of the reasons that we are here in Oxford. We're here in Oxford because it's the home of the Skoll Centre for Social Entrepreneurship. We're here in Oxford because it's the home of the Saïd Business School. And we're here in Oxford because it is the home of the found cause. And yours is the found cause. That is, in my view, Oxford's deepest desire. Welcome to Oxford. We're also here to talk about ambition. This year's rubric is that peculiar restlessness that makes us do things that we might not rationally do. It makes us create the internet. It makes us wish to eradicate disease. It allows us to pitch at the world's biggest problems. It changes the nature of our horizons and our goals. And it is the reason you are all gathered here. You are ambitious people, and your goal is ambitious. It is nothing less than to improve the state of the world. But ambition, of course, has another side. It crawls as well as soars, as the famous line from Burke goes. And that, for those of you who don't read philosophy, is Edmund, not Jim. Okay. And when ambition crawls, it is self-regarding and self-serving and all the opposites of what you wish for. Okay? And what we wish for here is positive ambition. We want Mandela, not Macbeth. Okay? We want Harry Potter, okay? And not Francis Underwood. Okay. 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 You have role models for positive ambition. We want stretch. We want aspiration. We want the sublime unreasonableness of unreasonable goals and intentions. We do not want the venality or the triviality of Macbeth. And if there is a community in the world that builds positive ambition, you are it. And I congratulate you on that, and I congratulate you on finding your way to Oxford. And if at any point you wish me to go closer to the podium and closer to pieces of paper with real words written on them, I'll expect you to start whistling or booing or something. So the noise may follow me closer and further from the podium. Ambition is a doubled, complex, ambiguous phenomenon, always part of its opposite. And in that doubling, we meet this week. And in that doubling, I expect your conversations in hallways and seminars and workshops and plenaries and over dinner and over drinks to be productive and ambitious. And I congratulate you on your ambition. Okay? And positive ambition has no more colossal impersonation or personification than the person without whom none of us would be here. Jeff's ambitions are colossal and colossally positive. And it is my very great pleasure and honor to introduce you tonight, Jeff Skoll.
Thank you for your kind words, Stephan, and for dividing your sabbatical between Oxford and California. For many people, a sabbatical in California would mean frolicking in the waves and listening to the Beach Boys. But Stephan, I know that you have done so much more. You're truly a good friend, and we're so grateful for the important role you play as the chair of the Skoll Center here in Oxford. Speaking about Oxford, I'd also like to say a special thank you to the wonderful Pamela Hartigan. And of course, Dean Peter Tufano. Good evening and welcome to the 11th Annual Skoll World Forum on Social Entrepreneurship. Look around you. You are amongst family, and it's a growing family. 1,000 of us here today from 6 continents. A far smaller number have attended all 11 of our gatherings. I'd like those 11 to stand and be recognized. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is one of my favorite weeks of the year. I always arrive here exhausted from the pace of the spring and leave here exhilarated from sharing time with you and celebrating your stories. In fact, celebrating is a big part of what we do. Our mission at the foundation is to drive large-scale change by investing in, connecting, and celebrating social entrepreneurs and the innovators who help them solve the world's most pressing problems. This evening, I'm going to talk about storytelling. Storytelling is in our DNA as human beings. It's embedded in all of us from the time we sat around campfires and swapped tales. I've always believed that a story well told can make a difference. Stories can spotlight problems, they can identify solutions, and they can lead us to action. Since 2005, the Skoll Foundation has invested in storytelling through a number of media partnerships, including with filmmakers at the Sundance Institute. Each year, Sundance and the Foundation bring together a group of filmmakers and social entrepreneurs at the Sundance Film Festival. Now, some might think that the left-brained, business-savvy social entrepreneurs and the right-brained filmmakers who think of themselves as artists would live in different worlds. But we've learned they have a lot in common. They are creative and imaginative. They're problem solvers. They share a desire to reach people and to have an impact. We've found time and time again that together they're more powerful than either could be acting alone. Here's a good example. A couple of years ago, Partners in Health joined with Sundance filmmakers Keith Davidson and Corey Stern to make a short documentary called Open Heart. It's the story of 8 sick Rwandan children who left their families behind and embarked on a life or death journey into the Sudan. There, they hope to get open heart surgery in Africa's only free of charge, state-of-the-art cardiac hospital. Let's take a look at a scene from Open Heart.
abagira neza bamuboneye amafaranga yo kugira ngo yoherezwe Sudani kugira ngo ajye kubagwa. Rheumatic heart disease starts primarily by strep throat.
There are 18 million people already affected by the disease in Africa. 300,000 a year, they die. We have been drained out of money.
You know rheumatic heart disease is a disease of poor people.
Yeah. Access.
Good.
I don't know about you, but every time I see these scenes, it moves me. When they began working together, neither Partners in Health nor the filmmakers could have known that the film would be nominated for a 2013 Academy Award. Nor could they have guessed that Rwanda's Minister of Health would see the film and become so inspired that she would make the eradication of rheumatic heart disease in children a priority for her country. Now, Partners in Health, with help from the Skoll Foundation, is working with the Rwandan government to support the rollout of the health ministry's plan. That's the power of storytelling. Our partners, yes. Our partnership with Sundance also brought us a beautiful short film by Jahan Nujaim and Mona Eldaif called Rafea Solar Mama. It reached over 500 million homes around the world and featured Skoll entrepreneur Bunker Roy. Bunker, it's always great to have you here with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've known Jahan for many years, and recently she directed an epic documentary about the Egyptian revolution called The Square. It's a powerful film about the yearning for freedom, and this year was also nominated for an Academy Award. My company, Participant Media, has been a part of this film, and as a special treat, we'll be having a screening here in New Theater on Thursday at 9:30 p.m. It's also on Netflix if you don't get a chance to see it tomorrow night. Participant Media is my own social enterprise. It really began as a childhood dream. As a kid, I used to read a lot, and I worried that the world of the future might be a pretty terrifying place. Overpopulation, terrible new weapons, new wars, diseases, and conflicts over essential things like water, forests, and fuel. I wanted to be a writer to tell stories to engage everyone in the big issues that would affect us all. Now, some of you may have seen other parts of the world when you were young, but I'd never even been on a plane until I was 20. And at that point, I got a one-way ticket to London and a backpack, and I went around the world for a year, and it really opened my eyes. Amongst other places, I visited Afghanistan, the Sudan, and India. But it was Pakistan that really made an impression on me. Here I met people living in abject poverty, but also without the hope that they could change their lives and change their own stories. And I now had human faces to put to the tales that I so desperately wanted to share. So after a small stint at eBay, making a buck or two, I turned back to my storytelling dreams. I moved to Los Angeles in 2004 to start my own company. It's the only media company of any scale in the world whose goal is to highlight issues in the world and inspire people to take action. In 10 years, we've produced over 50 films, including Lincoln, The Help, An Inconvenient Truth, The Cove, Food Inc., The Kite Runner, Charlie Wilson's War, and a long, long list of others. We even have a TV channel called Pivot that we launched last year in the US in 45 million homes, aimed at young people who not only want good entertainment, but to have the opportunity to participate and create positive social change as well. Like many of you, I received a lot of raised eyebrows when I began this journey. I heard many encouraging things, like, if you want to send a message, use Western Union. Or the surest way to become a millionaire is to start by being a billionaire and go into the movie business. And then there was my personal favorite. The streets of Hollywood are littered with the carcasses of people like you who think you're going to come to this town and make movies. And by the way, I heard that phrase repeated time and time again, word for word, and I could have sworn it must have been written in the town hall or something. But as I was doing diligence for the company, I asked all these movie people the same question. What are you proudest of in your career? And whether it was an actor, writer, agent, lawyer, banker, everyone responded by talking about a film that dealt with an issue they cared passionately about, ranging from AIDS to foster care to the rainforest. Then when I asked, what if there was a company that did more films about the issues that you care about, would you be supportive? The answer was, without exception, yes. And that gave me the encouragement I needed to start the company. I could see that people in the movie business, like people everywhere, and certainly like all of us, yearn to do work that has meaning, that improves the world in some way. Since then, we've won many awards and plaudits for our work, and I'm the last one to say that winning Oscars is a heavy burden. But I'm most proud that our films have made an impact in climate change, women's rights, education, the prison system, dolphin hunting, and many, many more. We team up with NGOs and social entrepreneurs who are experts in these fields and create campaigns to encourage people to take action. Here's a short clip that illustrates some of the films we've done.
This instrument can teach, it can illuminate, and yes, it can even inspire. But it can do so only to the extent that humans are determined to use it towards those ends. Good night, and good luck.
It is our time to rise again to secure our future.
Our greatest asset will be our ability as a human race to reach within ourselves, to find the courage to move toward peace.
I want to create a parliament. This guy might be able to revolutionize not just his country, but the whole region. The real democracy rising up organically. You can't win.
Whether you win or lose, you stand up.
We always go in with our ideals and we change the world. But that ball, though, it keeps on bouncing.
Someone has taken an interest in you and someone loves you, and they recognize the importance of education.
People have got to start demanding good, wholesome food of us, and we'll deliver.
This vaccine is a result of the courage and perseverance of a remarkable few.
You want to do something that'll make people change.
You said to write about what disturbs me, particularly if it bothers no one else. I'd like to write something from the point of view of the help.
There is no way
I'm gonna let either side dictate our fates.
No más. No más Pinocho.
Hunger is right here in the United States. It could be right next door, and you would never know because people are too afraid to talk about it.
It's going to be extraordinary.
It's one of the great revolutions of mankind. They know what they want and they're not leaving until they get it.
We're stepped out upon the world stage now, with the fate of human dignity in our hands. Blood's been spilled to afford us this moment now, now, now.
Once social change begins, it can't be reversed. We can't oppress someone who's not afraid anymore. We've seen the future, and the future's ours.
Thank you. Our movie about Cesar Chavez opened 2 weeks ago, and the reaction has been fantastic, but I can't wait to hear what you think about it. But more on that in a bit. The theme of this week's forum is ambition. So I must tell you that we have big ambitions for participant. We want to make local language films and television shows all around the world. In Latin America, where we've already begun, yay. In China, in India, in Russia, we want to grow on television and online so that we can touch more people. Our goal, nothing less than to be the world's most important media company. So I say that with humility, but in this crowd, I'm inspired to think big, in large part by all of you, by your stories, by your creativity, by your goodness, and in particular by your chutzpah, by your fierce determination to let nothing stand in your way. I'm thinking this week in particular about those of you who fight on behalf of girls who want to go to school. We know there are no silver bullets that will eradicate poverty, but girls' education comes pretty close. It shouldn't be controversial. Unfortunately, in too many parts of the world, it is. No one should have to take huge risks to advocate on behalf of girls, yet many of you do. I'm inspired by Sakina Yaqubi, who returned to Afghanistan in the 1990s, determined to deliver education and health care to girls there, despite opposition from the Taliban. I'm motivated by Karatelin Bakhtiri of IDSP, who has established 2,000 primary girls' schools in Pakistan in the face of a violent insurgency there. Tomorrow night, I have the great honor of presenting the Skoll Global Treasure Award to a young woman who inspired us all to care about the issue of girls' education as never before. I'm talking, of course, about Malala. We'll have more to say about her tomorrow, but since our theme tonight has been storytelling, I'm proud to announce that Participant Media is producing a feature-length documentary about Malala in partnership with Image Nation. I'm excited to think about all the good that that movie is going to do. And yes, every spring here in Oxford, I get excited when I think about all the good the people in this room have done, but more importantly, by what you are going to do in the years ahead. I'm humbled to be here amongst you. I'm honored to support you. I'm proud to call many of you my friends. You deserve to be celebrated and to have your stories told. So, that brings me back to Cesar Chavez, the hero who organized farm workers in the United States in the 60s and 70s. His birthday is a holiday in several states where people are encouraged to spend the day doing community service. We're working to make this a national holiday to inspire everyone in America to do their part to improve their community and make a difference in the world. When Cesar Chavez finished his rallies, he would lead everyone with the chant, "Sí, se puede," Spanish for "yes, we can." And since these words apply to all of you, and in the spirit of the Skoll World Forum and this year's theme of ambition, I'd like to finish my remarks in honor of Cesar Chavez and have you all join with me by standing up and chanting "Sí se puede" as loud as you can. Ready? On the count of 3, here we go, stand up. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Sí se puede! Sí se puede! Sí se puede! Sí se puede! Thank you very much. Let's have a wonderful week together.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Jeff, can I have my note? Thank you, Jeff, in all the many ways in which it's possible to say thank you. I think the simplest thing I can say at this point is, yes, he can. As you know, the Skoll World Forum is all about ideas and connections and inspiration, and those things emerge best in dialogue. And we have a really interesting conversation for you this evening, and are hugely fortunate that Mindy Lubber has agreed to host it for us. Mindy is a long-standing friend of the forum, and you know her very well. She corrals investment capital, nearly $10 trillion of it. Okay. And in case you didn't hear that correctly, nearly $10 trillion of investment capital corralled by Mindy Lubber to focus on the risks and opportunities of climate change. That's ambition. Welcome, Mindy.
How lovely to look out at friends, at colleagues, at social entrepreneurs, and be together here tonight and this week. This week, as Jeff said, was about ambition. And thank you both to Stephan for creating the frame, and to Jeff for showing us what ambition can do and what a social entrepreneur could accomplish. I'm not sure, Jeff, when you were growing up in Canada, even if you had a little bit of chutzpah, as you just said, guts, as my grandmother used to use that term, that you could have imagined what you would have built. One guy, human. Sometimes we think you're a little more than that, given all that you've accomplished. But Jeff is all of us. It's each of you who sit in this room tonight, who came here for this week to talk about ambition and to talk about audacity. Human ambition is the reason we're here. Ambition and audacity is what we think when we believe each of us could change the course of the world. Think about that. You know, we get up every day, we go to work, we go to school. To think we could change the course of the world, sometimes my husband says, that's a little bit too much for you to think about. But it is what I know each of you were thinking about, and that's what makes this such a special place. We're here to be together, to hope, to dream, to innovate, to act, to believe that each of us can contribute to building a sustainable world of peace and prosperity. Not an easy task, not an easy challenge, but each of us know in our heart, in our guts, in our mind that we've got no choice but to figure out how to do it and to put our shoulders to the wall and get out there and make change. Each of you in this room is a change agent. You're social entrepreneurs in your own right. Congratulations for all that you do. And to Jeff and Sally, just look around the room to see the trouble you've made and what you've built. It is hard enough to do all of this work each and every day. And what inspires us, what feeds our soul and our minds as social entrepreneurs and advocates, is to see what each other is doing, to be together, to nourish our souls, to know that if you're doing something, it's easier for me to do something. So a bold idea, nobody could have imagined what would have come from it 10, 11, 12 years ago. But we're 1,000 strong here. I know many turned away because you couldn't accommodate more, and there are thousands more around the world and able to accomplish something because what you have done. To Sally and Jeff, thank you. And now to our stars for the evening. This evening we have two extraordinary human beings. I call them rock stars because they are rock stars. They're successful entrepreneurs, they're successful business people, they're social activists, visionaries, bold thinkers who have taken ambition and audacity to bold new heights. I'm going to introduce them in 1 minute. I'm not going to read your full bios because you want to hear from them, not from me. You've got the information. But let me tell you, this is a little bit like speed dating. I've never gone speed dating, but this is going to be speed interviewing. We're going to get the most out of two extraordinary human beings. Those two human beings who I know you're waiting to hear from, Arif Naqvi from the Abraaj Group and Sir Richard Branson, truly are leaders in their own right. Arif is an investor who thought about integrating the costs of sustainability into his investments before it was popular to do. And he does it across the board, and he does it with clarity. And he's a social entrepreneur and a philanthropist and funds enormously important work. He was appointed by Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, to the Global Compact Board, a group that works with businesses around the world to integrate sustainability, environment, humanity, social service, and human rights into all that they do as companies. And he has won numerous awards, including the highest form of recognition, the Oslo Business for Peace Award from the Business for Peace Foundation. He is a true rock star, and we will talk with him in about 10 seconds. And then Sir Richard Branson. I've been told I don't have to call him sir. He's a casual guy, and indeed he is. He's an incredibly casual guy, but an incredibly successful guy, a bold leader, an entrepreneur, a social activist. The Virgin Group runs 400 companies. Not 10, not 20, but 400. Jeff, you're on your way, but 400, it's a good goal. Let's see what it takes to get there. And he's not only successful in building extraordinary businesses, but inspiring thought leaders and building extraordinary not-for-profit social entrepreneurial ventures that are doing terrific things. From the Elders, which Jeff has been part of, a group of thought leaders have truly changed the way so many of us think, to the Carbon War Room, a group of innovators and entrepreneurs thinking about how we fuel a clean energy economy, to a newer venture, the B Team, where he's bringing together business leaders to work on integrating the values that each of us believe in into how they run their businesses. And then, of course, there's Virgin Galactic, which I hope we hear a little bit more tonight. Let's bring them out, have some questions, and we'll learn a little bit more on what drives their success and what drives them as human beings. For my colleagues, come on out. Thank you. Why don't you each say a quick hello, and then we'll dig right in.
Hello. Hello. I was once on stage when you said the 400 companies with Larry Page from Google, and he introduced me and he said, and he runs 400 companies, and I only run one. And I said, I'll swap.
And Arif, a quick hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm a little bit intimidated because I can't see all those people up there, but I know that area is all full. It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation. Thank you.
He's very, very tired, so we're going to see what we can get out of him. They've gone to get him a double espresso from next door. So
we should have started with that.
It comes from living on an airplane.
All right, very quickly. We all live in awe of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who has spoken from this stage in years past. Richard, in 2008, you appeared with the Archbishop in the Sundance series Iconoclasts. During the episode, and I watched it carefully, the Archbishop said, an iconoclast is someone who comes along and says, let's just try something new, and that iconoclast generally turns out to be right. Through both of your entrepreneurial careers and humanitarian work, you have both been global leaders in and supporters of trying something new and making something happen. If you could each talk a bit about what drives your ambition to think big and take risks, and from the perspective of your own personal resilience, how have you dealt with the inevitable challenges and, frankly, the failures that all entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs face along the way, as these are hard jobs that our audience are taking on?
Well, I think frustration is what often spurs us on. Actually, it was 30 years ago this year that I was trying to get from Puerto Rico to the British Virgin Islands on another airline. And the airline decided that they only had half full, and therefore they bumped us all. And I was doubly frustrated because I had a beautiful lady, who happens to be in the audience today, waiting for me that evening in the British Virgin Islands. So I went to the back of the airport. I was quite a young man, 28 or something. I hired a plane, which I could barely afford, but then wrote on a blackboard, Virgin Airlines, which I invented there and then, $39 one way to the British Virgin Islands. And I went out amongst all the people who'd been bumped, and I filled my plane. And of course, I was no longer frustrated when I got to. Thank you very much.
This is for real.
But anyway, it got me thinking, and that was that airlines do bump people. And so when I got back to England, I rang Boeing and said, "Have you got any second-hand 747s for sale?" And the rest is history. So I think, frustration is what I think spurs us to start businesses, and if other people are not doing it well, you get in there and you fill in the gap. And frustration of the troubles of the world is what gets us in there to try to resolve the problems of the world, or do our best. You mentioned Archbishop Tutu, and I've been privileged to spend a lot of time with him over the years, and he always mixes this wonderful sense of humor with very potent campaigning on issues that he feels strongly about. Last month, Uganda, in its wisdom, did a terrible human rights atrocity in saying that gay people would have to go to prison for life, and people who didn't report gay people would have to go to prison for life. And Archbishop Tutu came out with, I think, came out with the following statement, and that was, if I go to heaven, if I'm lucky enough to go to heaven, and I find God is a homophobe, I'm going to ask him to send me to the other place.
Well, humor is important as we go through the travails of what we all do. And audacious ideas and boldness certainly has taken you far. I like the idea of walking off a plane and starting your own airline. Sounds pretty simple, if only. Arif, tell me what moves you, inspires you, and how you deal with failure as well as success.
I think, you used a good word back then, which was audacity. And I think any halfway decent entrepreneur has got to start by thinking that he can be audacious in the ideas that he wants to propel. And in my view, when I look back at the part of the world that I live in, which a lot of you mistakenly call emerging markets, it's a bit patronizing. I call them global growth markets, because most of the world's growth is going to come from those markets. And I look and see the landscape and the opportunity that we have there to really reshape a very, very crucial part of the world. Because if you think back over the last 50 years, we are living through phenomenal change, turbulent times, and we've had more progress in the last 50 years than we've had in the previous gazillion, right? And when you imagine the fact that along with all of this prosperity, along with all of this development and technological advances, we're also at the same time grappling with extreme poverty, with extreme inequality, and extremely difficult living conditions for large segments of the population. So I was fortunate in that I was running a private equity firm, which I started. And of course, I didn't set off to be the largest private equity firm operating across global growth markets. It happened because we were diligent. We were clear that we wanted to get there. But we didn't focus on that as an outcome. But very, very early on, we realized that in order to be successful and in order to grow in that world, you have to be very driven by a very important element called stakeholder engagement. And because of that, from the very first day, we set out saying, this is a big landscape. It's our opportunity to grow within it. And we were very, very focused on ensuring that we were driving value in almost every element of what we were doing. And I think that has been a very crucial part of aiming big and getting it right as well.
Tell us a little bit about what stakeholder engagement means to you and how you do it.
Sure. So for me, the whole perspective around stakeholder engagement is long-term value creation. Too much of what we do is driven by short-term thinking, short-term gain, immediate, instant gratification. If you don't engage with the stakeholder community in which you're operating, if you do not understand that a company cannot be an island of excellence in an ocean of turbulence, if you can't work out that in order to succeed going forward in the future, you can't be driving a Range Rover through Soweto without doing something about Soweto as well. So that at its simplest form is how we define stakeholder engagement, not only to make money in an environment where it was relatively easier to do so, but then to put back a lot of it into engagement in the community. So one of the things that all of you as social entrepreneurs are very focused on is this whole idea of how ESG can be central to our thinking. From the first day that we started, we put it at the core of our existence. We said, this is not a nice to do, this is not a, it'll be fun to do. It is a core part of our business principles, because if you create sustainable businesses, you actually create profitable businesses. And I used to go out and tell people that, success comes before work only in the dictionary. We've got to work, we've got to be really very focused on working hard, and we will be successful. And what's the biggest premise of being successful? Is to give back. And what I mean by that is I operate in the private equity industry. For far too long, the private equity industry has had a reputation, particularly in the West, of being these alchemists. They stick their hands into this black box. They come out and, suddenly base metal is gold. And the longer you keep people in the dark about how we actually go about doing it, the longer we tend to make money. Well, the reality is we're just people that work very hard. We're people that understand our industry. And in our part of the world, if we do it right, and if we take away the myth, if we realize that we're actually on Main Street, not on Wall Street, then we can infect the businesses that we own with the virus of doing things in the right way. And the best example I can give you is one day, not very far from now, we're going to be walking into a supermarket, and we're going to be seeing 3 bottles of water lined up on a shelf, and we'll buy the one from the company that engages most in the communities that it operates in. And that, to me, is a big win for anyone. So when we talk about stakeholder engagement and the centrality of ESG in our thinking, the most important element of that is that every single one of my colleagues takes it as a core component of what they do. We did not create a foundation deliberately. All of us give, and give very actively, because we want every single person in our company and the 300,000 people that work in our businesses to be infected with that virus and then start giving more and more.
Great. Richard, I've not thought about it as a virus, but you clearly have been infected with that virus as well, of businesses doing good. I mean, while we live in a moment, and I do think times are changing, sustainability is slowly getting integrated into capital markets, not quickly enough. You're still driven. Everybody's driven by short-term returns, by analysts saying, what did you do for me today? By what kind of returns and shareholder value can you show me? you've done in every one of your businesses, as well as with your efforts around the B team, something near and dear to my heart as I work with an NGO that works with hundreds of companies and investors to integrate environmental, social governance into their work. But it's hard, and the pushback is strong, and Wall Street says, we're only interested in how much money you can make over the next 3 months or 6 months. You've somehow said, I'm not living by that standard, and I can succeed at the same time. Tell me a little bit about how you think about that for your companies and your work with the B team.
I think the chief executive of Apple stood up to his shareholders the other day and said, look, if you don't like the fact that I'm doing things to try to address global warming, and it might cost you, the shareholders, a little bit of money, sell your shares and go and invest in another company. And I thought that was very refreshing, and we need, I think, more chief executives to stand up to their shareholders and act in that way. Because, what is a company? A company is just a group of people who are working together to try to make people's lives better. If your company is not making people's lives better, it won't exist. And that applies to most companies. Obviously, cigarette companies, there's a few exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, that's what a company is. And I think what the B team are trying to do is to say to people who lead companies all over the world, if we can join with governments and the social sector and all of us become forces for good, every single company in the world become forces for good. Little companies become forces for good on local basis, bigger companies on a national basis, bigger companies still on an international basis. Adopt problems and use our entrepreneurial skills to go out and get on top of these problems. We will get on top of all the problems in the world. I mean, there's so many great entrepreneurial people out there who do great things in their own companies, who could do incredible things if they think on a global basis. And the B team is also there just to try to look at issues where we feel that maybe the business world are letting the world down. So look at corruption in business. Just make sure we stamp it out and it doesn't exist anymore. And if we find a businessman who's corrupt, we expose them. Look at subsidies of dirty fuels. Look at subsidies of fishermen who are doing terrible damage to some parts of our oceans. Look at the workforce and are people getting a really fair deal when they go to work, and are they being treated with dignity? And so we've got a wonderful group of people in the B team who are trying to address some of these issues, and hopefully it can make a difference.
You're both optimists, you're successful, you're hopeful. These challenges that we're talking about that Richard just laid out, which are imperatives. Not-for-profits need to work with businesses to make change, to solve some of the world's greatest problems: poverty, education, climate change, water shortages. But we're not making quite enough progress for everybody to go home this evening and say, I might take a pass next year. We know the challenges are big. Tell me how you keep your optimism, and give us all some advice about how to stay the course over the long run. These problems don't go away easily.
Because a lot of the things that we do lead to wins that make us feel good, not just about ourselves, but about the people that we're associated with. The first thing, for example, that we set out in all our thinking to all our people is we said, stop thinking of the use of the word charity, start thinking of the use of the word philanthropy when you're giving, simply because charity implies an unequal relationship between giver and recipient. And for us, when we looked at the idea that we could actually, as a business, do extremely well, we're very profitable. Don't get me wrong, guys, we're very profitable. But in the course of doing so, we realized that we have the ability to deploy some of that and use some of that in very, very important work that is being done. And I think one of the reasons why the world has struggled for a bit is because social engagement and social entrepreneurship in the eyes of hard-nosed business people came out of a fringe element. It came out slightly from left of center, and the word NGO rapidly became associated with slightly soft thinking. It's only now that people are beginning to realize that this short-term pressure on earnings, this ridiculous obsession with creating immediate and instant value does not lead to sustainable companies. Let's not forget that of the Forbes 500 companies in the world today, about half of them are companies that weren't on that list 20 years ago. A lot of the companies that were there a couple of decades ago are non-existent. It's partly due to that short-term obsession as well. And today's successful businesses are the ones that are engaging actively with realizing that they need to have a responsibility beyond the instantaneous gratification of that stock market blip, 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 blip nonsense.
It is, and we will get there. Richard, I'm going to go from the sort of nonsense to the true audacious. Everybody wonders about Virgin Galactic. Particularly, we're sitting here at Oxford University. Edwin Hubble graduated from Oxford. You're thinking great thoughts, but you're putting together something that has a vision that many of us could never have imagined.
If you take me with you, I'll sing Take Me to the Moon.
We got a song coming up.
Done.
Your wife asked me to offer you a one-way ticket. Don't worry, not really. It's ridiculously exciting, and it is rocket science, which I've learned. It's taken us longer than we thought to get there. But later this year, I do believe that we will have accomplished the first part of our mission, which is to start sending people into space. And when you think that there's only been 540 people sent to space, and that's since space travel began and many years ago, and that includes the Russians, the Chinese, and the Americans. And then when you think that actually, I think about 80% of the population, if they could afford it, would love to go to space, and if we offer them a return ticket, there's an enormous sort of pent-up desire to travel in space, to look back at this beautiful Earth. And what we're hoping is that the engine of those people going to space will then enable us to do really extraordinarily exciting things. There's 3 billion people in this world who don't have mobile phones, they don't have internet access, they don't have Wi-Fi. If you don't have internet access, it's very difficult to get an education today in some of these places. If you don't have a mobile phone, it's very difficult to start a business. So, if you turn the clock forward 4 or 5 years from now, I think that Virgin Galactic will have enabled most of those people to be able to afford to get that access. And then there are other very exciting things. I mean, wouldn't it be lovely for somebody who's just done a 15-hour plane journey, to be able to go to Australia in 40 minutes? And if we can send you orbitally to Australia, you'll be traveling at 18,000 miles an hour. We think it's possible to do. Well, our spaceship is built like an airplane, and for a reason. And it'll get bigger, it'll get bigger, and it'll get bigger. And if we can push it outside the Earth's atmosphere and back down again, we can do it in an almost completely environmentally friendly way. So big dreams. Some of these dreams will come true. Some of them, will fall flat on our face. But we're going to give it our best shot.
Indeed. So that is knowledge and audacity. To my hosts and our hosts, we're not quite there yet. I was told I would have a time clock, and I'm missing it. Do we have time for another question? Do we get a yes? Terrific. Well, I would like to listen to these gentlemen for 5 hours, but we'll take a shot at another question, and I apologize for not noting the time clock. Let me ask this question. Arif, in a recent survey, you said you wish to be a fly on the wall in 50 to 75 years from now, because the world would look dramatically different from our world looks today. For both of you, what is the world going to look like? What is your ambition for the world to look like? What are we leaving for our younger generations and generations yet to come? And what advice can you give to the audacious people in this crowd, 1,000 strong and many more, for how each of us can help shape the world, so when you're looking at it 75 years from now, you're feeling like you're ready to give a high five rather than worrying about your children and your grandchildren?
Phew, that was a long question. I forgot what you were asking. I'm kidding. You know, one of the most exciting things about sitting on this platform with Richard is I actually remember, like, when I was a young kid of 9 or 10, watching man walk on the moon for the first time. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, how privileged am I to be watching this? And then I sit, you know, X number of years later, 40 years later, listening to him talking about sending commercial people into space and knowing the reality that a little cell phone in today's world has more power than that instrument that landed man on the moon back then. It has enabled us to dream. So when I talk about technical innovation and when I think about the way that the world has speedily moved on, it was in that context that I said I wish I was a fly on the wall 75 years from now, because I know I'm not going to be there. That's a world that we're leaving to our children. But in the context of leaving it to our children, I think that our generation has done some very good things. It's changed the world in very positive ways. It's also done some very bad things. And part of the bad things, for example, is we have, generally speaking, entered a trend where we are in the context of breaking a promise. There are more unemployed graduates in the world today than there have ever been in the history of the world. And these are people that we send to college saying, go and you will be better than us, but the jobs aren't there. We haven't created the enabling environment for these kids to have a viable future. But for me, the opportunities that this world is throwing up through technological innovation, through mental stimulation, through the way in which we're moving forward as rapidly as we are, tells me that we are actually today in a watershed moment. The fact that we had a global financial crisis in 2008, and we never punished anyone for it, but that's another story altogether. But the reality is that that was a great moment, actually, because it forced us to stop and think what was wrong with the system. Over time, we'll fix that too. This watershed moment is going to enable us to take a quantum leap forward. For example, 75 years ago, there were only 70 countries in the world. Today, there are 200. And yet we consider that the entire world's map as we see it today is cast in stone. Well, countries are a product of merely the last 100 years of colonial evolution. The real reality is the cities. The cities that have been centers of urban civilization. Damascus is a city that has been there for a few thousand years, whether or not Syria continues to be the same or not. The same with Cairo, the same with London, and so on. So I think we're too focused right now on national boundaries. We should be much more focused on the commonality of what each of us can do for ourselves and for each other. Globalization has had some massive positive impact, but we haven't yet begun to harness the power of it. And I think that we have this divide called North and South, unfortunately, more pronounced than it's ever been. We have a lot of people wanting to do good in the global growth markets, in Africa, in Latin America, and so on, but are not finding the channels to be able to do so. I think if we all come together, then the world that I'll be viewing 75 years from now is going to be a spectacularly good one.
Terrific. Richard, take us into the next 75 years.
You don't have to talk anymore.
Hey.
I'm a real optimist, and I think if the social workers in this room can work with the business world and with politicians, and we can just rally together, I think we can get on top, as I said, of most of the problems in the world. And if you go forward 50 years, I think there will be 2 billion less people than there are today. And the reason I think that is that as people are lifted out of poverty, they have less children, and they're apt to move to cities where, again, they have less children. And I think, if you look at the last few decades, the amount of people coming out of poverty is moving forward in a really dramatically positive way. But I think there are things we've got to do urgently in the short term, because it would be too sad in 50 years' time if we don't have any sharks, if we don't have any lemurs, if we don't have any rhinos, if we don't have any elephants, etc. So there are immediate challenges which we've just got to get on top of and campaign to stop the sort of atrocities that are going on with our species around the world. You know, 50 years from now, I mean, it's just unbelievable that a Syrian crisis can have been allowed to get out of control in the way this one has. You know, it's just got to be a thing of the past. And hopefully the elders by then will have resolved all conflicts, and we'll cross our fingers.
Amen to that.
Thank you.
Well, that is inspiring. I think for each of us who works hard every day, listening to these stories, knowing it can be done, having you out there as visionaries and guiding lights, for all of us, our heartfelt thanks, and let's give you a round of applause. That was great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Arif. Those optimistic, partially optimistic pictures of 50 years hence. Marcus Bleasdale is a recovering banker. He takes amazing pictures of now, and he exemplifies how understanding some of the underlying principles of economics, of business, of entrepreneurship can inform progress. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you. Good evening, and thanks very much for inviting me here to talk with you. My name is Marcus Bleasdale, and I'm a photographer for National Geographic magazine. But my journey didn't start off being so interesting. I read economics and business at university and ended up going to work for a British merchant bank in the City of London. A very long way from National Geographic and a very, very long way from photography. But after 8 years, I felt I needed a change. And the catalyst for that change was the day I walked into the office and I was asked by one of the traders if I'd heard about the massacre that had been discovered in the Balkans. And he asked what did I think that would do to the price of the dollar. He'd taken human suffering and tried to make a profit from it. I walked into my boss's office and I resigned. 3 days later, I went to the Balkans with my camera. The next 15 years I spent documenting conflicts around the world in the Balkans, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Somalia, Chad, Darfur, South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and most recently, I've spent the last 6 months documenting the devastating conflict in the Central African Republic. Some of the worst things I've seen, actually, in the last 6 months. I try to use these photographs I take to create tools for decision makers and policymakers to press for change and peace. And over that time, I've used my training in economics, yes, it was useful in the end, to search out reasons why these conflicts existed. And I've used my photographs to try to educate governments and multinational corporations on natural resource exploitation and the use of conflict minerals in our electronic products. The electronic products we're all using today to tweet and Instagram and Facebook. This young boy is working in a gold mine in the northeastern part of Congo. He's forced to work there by the militia who are extracting this gold and shipping it across the border to Uganda to be sold on the international markets, and we buy it. When they're not working in the mines, many of the children are forced to carry Kalashnikovs and fight to gain access to the very mines that the rebels need to control. These conflicts force people to leave their homes. Many flee with just the bare contents of a bag or something that they can carry on their head. And they arrive in the displaced camps set up around the eastern parts of Congo. Up to 2.5 million people have been displaced at any one time in DRC. As you can see, the facilities, health facilities are dire. The main cost of this is the desperate death toll. 5.5 million people have died, over 5.5 million people have died in DRC, not because of the bullet or the gun, but because of the lack of access to medication, lack of access that is caused by the overall insecurity. And over these years, I've used these very photographs and others as an advocacy tool that recently led to Intel announcing that they would no longer use conflict minerals in their processors. Apple has recently announced that it will no longer use conflict tin in its products. This is huge. There are congratulations to both of those companies. There's a lot more that needs to be done, and there are still many, many conflict minerals used in our electronic products around the world. The fight is not yet over, but this was a huge step in the right direction. And this is the evidence that there is a power in photography. After 15 years of documenting and working in conflict zones around Africa, I was thrilled last year when I was asked by the World We Want Foundation to go and see if I could document hope on the very continent that I'd been documenting conflict. In 1990, only 3 African countries could be called a democracy, and that number now has increased to 19. Only 4 out of the 55 recognized states lack a multi-party constitution, and this stability has brought increased direct investment, and over the past 10 years, per capita income has increased by nearly 30% in comparison to the previous decade where it fell 10%. Over the next, foreign direct investment has increased by 15 billion since 2000, has increased from 15 billion in 2002 to 46 billion in 2012. There is the power for working for peace and democracy. That growth is the result of the confidence of average civilians and the confidence they have in investing in themselves. The majority of people want to work hard for their families, and in order to build a more stable future, it was these people I tried to search out to understand the change that was transforming this continent. Along the way, I met Macrina Musonga. She's an amazing woman who used to worry about feeding her family and certainly didn't have any hope of educating her children. She struggled daily to farm and irrigate a small plot of land, to grow her crops, and then one day she heard on the radio an advert for a water pump called Moneymaker, an irrigating tool distributed by an organization called Kickstart. She sold her last 2 bags of rice, yes. An incredible organization. She sold her last 2 bags of rice to buy the pump that invested, and that investment allowed her family to increase the size of their harvest more than 10-fold over 4 years. They now have 10 acres of land, 15 cows, and they send their children to school. That pump has been instrumental in changing their lives, and there is the power of smart investment. At Afrimax Macadamia Nut Processing Facility on the outskirts of Nairobi, they have increased their production levels because smart philanthropic finance allowed them to secure the supply of nuts from their farmers. This led to the farmers receiving a fair price for their product, which in turn led to them having confidence in investing in planting more trees to meet the new demand, which in turn led to more wealth and better education for their children. At the processing plants, over 90% of the employees are young women, all of whom are now able to offer their children better nutrition and improved access to education and healthcare. There's a power in smart philanthropy. Crossing the border, the Komoko Poacher Transformation Program started in 2001 in Zambia. They train poachers in effective agriculture and other trades in order to encourage them to stop poaching and look for more stable livelihoods. To date, 1,329 poachers have been educated and trained in different skills, and they have volunteered 1,900 guns and 77,500 snares. William here and his family used to live off William killing elephants, 5 a year. William used to kill, but they still couldn't feed the family effectively enough. He retrained and is now supplying groundnuts to the local peanut butter factory. He has a steady, reliable income, and his children go to school. His main customer is Comico's peanut butter factory, and Comico not only conserves wildlife, but they sell the peanut butter product and soy products to customers who distribute all across Africa. Their Yummy soy brand, and it is yummy, is becoming the go-to locally produced brand, which is used by many NGOs to prevent malnutrition in young children. African labor producing African food for African people. There is a power in partnerships. These people are living testimony to the change and the growth of a continent, encouraged by smart philanthropy and an underlying passion for a better future. I hope we can all work on this together to encourage more of this work. And so I no longer need to document the conflict across this continent. And my wife, I think, would like that very much. I hope you can all agree with me that there is a power in empowering social entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
There are always those who tell us that we're wrong. In baleful phrases of resignation, they tell us it will be what it will be, it is what it is, we are where we are, what will be, will be. What you've just heard and seen is the power of witness to resist that. Thank you, Marcus. Sir Ronald Cohen has sat at the high table of recent history, a founding light of modern venture capital and now a founding light of social investment. His vision and energy is central to what we do. Please join me in welcoming Sir Ronald Cohen.
Thank you very much, Stephan. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Jeff, I salute you and everything that you've done to push social entrepreneurship forward. And Marcus, in a way, has given me the perfect lead-in, which is the empowerment of social entrepreneurs, which is who you are. Each of us has come here today after a long journey of many years involving costly effort and resources and much passion. And what has driven us here is a desire to help others, because we realize that something is fundamentally wrong with our society. When I came up to Oxford, equality of opportunity was the slogan. Today, I have to admit it's an empty slogan, because those who are left behind are left permanently behind. And what does equality of opportunity mean for a child born into a family where both parents are unemployed and in the grip of a drug habit? If you look at how we've tried to deal with social issues, you begin to realize that our system deals with its financial and economic consequences very effectively, but does not deal with its social consequences. Philanthropy, 150 years ago, began to target social issues. By the 1930s, even though foundations had got tax status and exemptions, philanthropists were throwing their hands up at social issues, and governments took over. By the mid-1940s, we began to see the creation of many welfare states. And today, governments are throwing their hands up. If you look at government expenditure since 2008 on the provision of social services, it's flat. The needs have been rising because of the crisis and are going to continue to rise because of an aging population everywhere in the world. And governments cannot cope. And so we've been searching for many years now for the way to bring about a revolution. And the word revolution is a word that I'm hearing increasingly frequently when one talks about social issues. As chairman of the G8 established task force on social impact investment, I have heard countless social entrepreneurs present, countless social investors, countless ministers, countless financiers. And the common theme is it cannot go on as it's doing now. We need a revolution in the way that we tackle social issues. If we don't find more effective ways of tackling them, not only are we going to find ourselves living in a society whose social fabric is rent by social division and violence, but we're going to live in a deeply unfair society. And it is going to corrode our values. And so I'm here today to open a window on the empowerment that Marcus talked about. When I last spoke at the Skoll Forum about 5 years ago, we were talking about releasing unclaimed assets. Here in the UK now, we have £600 million in big society capital, 2/3 of which comes from bank accounts that had been separated from their owners for 15 years or more. We have 24 organizations in the UK which are capable of pushing forward a social agenda using these new tools. The same is true in the United States, in Canada, in Australia. And the breakthrough in thinking came about 3 years ago, when the social impact bond was devised. And the breakthrough wasn't the social impact bond in itself. It was saying, we've always assumed that we cannot measure social outcomes. We cannot measure the performance of a social organization. And that's why social organizations have had to rely on philanthropists, like many of us in this room today, who have given us money for 2 or 3 years and said, after that, as a sanity check, go raise it from somebody else, and please don't spend any money on your overheads. When the social impact bond was developed in 2010, and the Ministry of Justice in the UK agreed that if we raised £5 million to deal with the prisoners of Peterborough Jail, 2/3 of whom reoffend within a year of their release, a percentage that exists everywhere across the world, 2/3 of released young prisoners reoffend within 18 months of their release. And we said to the government, we will work with not-for-profits. We will fund them with £5 million. And if we fail to reduce the rate of reoffending over 7 years by 7.5%, the money will be lost. But if we are able to reduce it by 7.5% to 15%, then government will pay back the £5 million and an increasing yield that goes from 2 to 13%. And the punchline, ladies and gentlemen, government would only be paying out between 1/3 and 1/2 of the saving in the first year from improving those people's lives and giving them the chance to become productive members of society. The linking of a social performance and the financial return is what we've been looking for. It is the key to the revolution. It is the key to the capital markets. It is the key to giving social entrepreneurs and the organizations they lead access to capital on the same basis as a for-profit entrepreneur. Now, I've been lucky enough to have been involved in one revolution. It was the tech revolution. And we needed a financing response for young tech entrepreneurs, and Jeff will be smiling here, who very often had a great idea, but no business plan, no business experience, no financial savvy, and thought they could revolutionize our lives. We have reached the stage now where we have the ability to do the same for social entrepreneurs. I can see social entrepreneurs looking ahead 5 and 10 years, developing innovative models to tackle social issues such as those that we saw here, measuring the performance on the social objectives that they set out, that investors invested in, and increasing the size of their organizations to tackle the target population that they aspire to help. If an organization is helping 700 homeless people in the UK when there are 30,000, it can now have the capital to begin to think of helping half that number or more. Social entrepreneurs will be able to decide whether they want to use a not-for-profit model to raise capital through social impact bonds, quasi-equity, subordinated debt, unsubordinated debt, to build their organizations in the same way that business entrepreneurs have been able to do. And those who use not-for-profit organization structures are going to be those who depend on the help of the community to achieve the social goals. And those who aspire to do things through markets, to harness the power of markets, those will opt perhaps for a profit with purpose organization structure. And there will be new corporate forms that lock in the social mission of organizations in the way that benefit corps have started to do in the United States. And it will become a feature of both the non-profit social entrepreneurs and the profit with purpose ones, that they set ahead of time objectives and they measure continuously their performance. We've heard a lot about the invisible hand of markets. Let us bring the invisible heart of markets to help those whom the invisible hand has left behind.
Thank you, Ronnie, a man with visible heart. I feel ready for the forum. Do you? Yes. And I feel thankful to the forum. So if you agree, I will propose 3 cheers. Cheer 1 for the amazing Pamela Hartigan, the Skoll Centre for Social Entrepreneurship, its Skoll Scholars and Associates, Oxford's MBA students who so wholeheartedly get it. Cheer 1. Cheer 2 for all our partners and sponsors, especially Bob Anible of Citi and Graham Macmillan of Citi Foundation, and to the MasterCard Foundation, which has brought 14 young global leaders to the forum, whom you will meet during this week. Cheer 2. Cheer 3 to the forum staff who make this experience so great. Thank you, Sarah Borgman, Thank you to anyone wearing orange, and thank you to the Skoll Foundation. Cheer 3. And since I can't count, can I have another cheer for my wife? Happy birthday, Claire. And at the risk of pushing my luck, one more cheer for you. This is an honorable and noble and important group, and you are it. Cheer. Okay, so now you're warmed up. You're nearly ready for dinner. Here, we don't work off dinner. We work up to dinner. I wish you a productive, invigorating, ambitious forum. I look forward to the glorious serendipity of conversations all over Oxford this week, and to the collective exhilaration that only the Skoll World Forum can produce. You have dinners to go to, and on the back of your badges, it will tell you where your dinner is. And if that weren't enough, to get you really deliriously, deliciously exhilarated, it's my huge pleasure to welcome back musician, composer, Grammy winner, performer for presidents, collaborator with Kanye West and Alicia Keys, Donna Summers, and myriad others, Goodwill Ambassador for the UN Associations of Brazil, CEO of Gedenk, dedicated to promoting awareness of among young people of the Jewish Holocaust, and undoubtedly social entrepreneur, Ben-Ari.
Thank you. I was sitting here in the audience and getting so inspired, to say the least. I'm truly humbled to be in this room with a company of so many people that made such a difference in the life of so many other people. And I was thinking to myself, how blessed I am to have the opportunity to play music that can trigger the imagination and the creativity and mental stimulation among people in the world and inspire you to inspire me. So this is such a great thing. You know, music is one of the best vehicles to deliver a message because it has no boundaries. It's free. It's for all. And it can tell a story. And this very next composition that I produced, I dedicated to one of my heroes, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And without further ado, this is a Symphony of Brotherhood.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Thank you. Do we have time for one more? I wanted to take the opportunity and thank you for inviting me to perform here tonight and be so inspired. Thank you, Jeff Skoll. Special thanks to my manager, Josie Sejor, that has been inspiring me to give back to the community. I'm from the land of Chutzma. I grew up in Israel. I came here, not here, to the state to follow my dream to play music. This very next composition is Dim the Light.
Dim the lights.